Thanks, Becky. So hi everyone, and we just want to start off with thanking you for signing up and joining the session today. So like Becky just said, the aim of the session today is to go over a little bit around what design is. So we're going to be thinking about a bit more broadly, but also what design is like at Autotrader. And then we've got a few short little tasks for you to go through today. So to start off with what design is like at Autotrader. So currently our design team is built up of around 18 people, and we work all over the business. So we influence the largest automotive marketplace in the UK. So on average, our designs are seen by around 55 million consumers a month. So we try not to think about that number a little bit too much because it adds some pressure onto us when we're doing all of our work. But I think that just shows the sort of vast amount of people that we do get coming to have a look on our site every month. So as far as people within our design team, we're currently built up of a few different roles. So we've got product designers. So product designers look at the bigger picture and the designs, thinking with the user in mind. And we've got content designers. So content designers make sure that the terminology and the placement of the information all makes sense. We've got user researchers. So user researchers work a lot with all of the different types of designers, and it's our job to make sure that what we design works and it meets the user's needs. And then we have our visual designers. So visual designers are those who are developing a brand that is strong and identifiable. So when you have a look at brands like Coca-Cola, all you have to do is have a look at that colour red or the font that's used on those bottles, and you can instantly recognise that brand. So that was what a visual designer would do in that role. So who are we? So I'm going to start off with introducing myself. So I'm Natalie. I'm a senior user researcher here at Autotrader, and I'm going to let Gabby and Kate introduce themselves as well. So I think they're going to pop their cameras on now.
Hello, so my name's Gabby. I'm a user researcher at Autotrader. I've been in the business about 5 years, but I've actually only been in the design team since October. So being a user researcher is still really new to me.
Hello everyone, my name's Kate. I'm a graduate product designer, and I started fairly new as well. I started back in October as a graduate, and I've been learning lots about product design as well.
Cool. And so I've worked at Autotrader for about 2 years, and previously I used to work for a behavioural research agency, so I used to do a lot of research with eye tracking. But if you've got any questions, feel free to ask those in the chat. So I'm going to hand over to Gabby in just a moment, but one of the first things that we're going to talk about is the fact that we can all be designers, because design is just thinking made visual. So whether it be an idea that we've got in our heads and you make a little sketch and you get it down on paper, that's all that design really is. And within our design team, there are a few people who are very good at drawing, and I think the vast majority of us are pretty useless. We are very dependent on some fancy design tools to make us bring everything to life. So I think this stigma around to be a designer, you have to be really arty. That's not always the case. I think it's just about having ideas and being able to explain those to other people in a visual way. So I'm going to hand over to Gabby now, who's going to start off the first few tasks that we've got for you today.
Thank you, Nat. Yep, so we've got a few different tasks to get you involved in today. I'm going to do them with you. So the first task is to take a sheet of paper and just start by tearing that sheet of paper in half. So I've not done this very well, but you should have now a piece of paper that is in 2 pieces. So there's a few different ways you could have done this. So some of you may have done it landscape, and some of you may have done it portrait, but it really doesn't matter. Onto another little task. Sorry, going back to that, sorry. So the point of that really is that, design is just about doing things differently. Whether you did it portrait or landscape, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, design is about solving problems, and we were all able to solve that problem. The next little task we're going to do today, you can either take one of the pieces you've torn in half if you're about recycling, or you can take a new piece of paper. And you have 1 minute to draw little pictures inside circles. So I'm just going to start a timer now.
Yeah, and I think every circle has to have a different picture in it. So you've got to think of many different pictures you can get in mini circles.
"20 seconds to go." Oh, now I can't get my timer to turn off. There we go. So that is the end. So I've managed to draw a few different ones there. So I've drawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've managed to draw 12. So it'd be great if you could post in the chat how many you were able to get done in the 1 minute. That's brilliant.
I think the maximum I've been able to do is like 13 whenever I've done this task myself.
Yeah.
I think I got to about 9 last time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So the main aim of that and what we've learned from that is that you can draw. So no matter what you put in those circles, including my awful ones here, we actually all can draw. And when we're put under pressure like that, it's amazing what we can come up with in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I think as we get older as well, like if you were to ask that to really young children, their imaginations would just go wild. But as we get older, we actually struggle to be just to be able to think fast and to use our imaginations in that way. So it can be quite difficult, but hopefully that's warmed your brains up a little bit for the next few exercises that we've got for you.
Okay, so one more activity with me is if you could take a piece of paper, either one you've used already or a new one, and just take your pen and just draw a squiggle like the one on the screen. So something like that. And what you can find is that even something that starts as a big squiggle on a piece of paper, we can actually turn it into a picture. So if you look at the one on the screen, you can find somewhere on your squiggle to add a beak. So we can turn this into a bird or something like that. So I'm adding mine. Then somewhere to add in an eye. Some feet. And lastly, a tail. Something like that.
So yeah, I think the aim of that one as well. So we wanted to have a few just short and little fun exercises to get you all thinking to start off with. But I think the aim of all of this is just to show that we can draw. It might not be perfect. It might not be hung up in a museum somewhere. But I think we're all able to get ideas down on paper. And I think that's the most important part of design. So before we move on to the next part, where we're going to have a bit of a more in-depth design task for you, we wanted to just go over some of the key design terms that we find in design. So really, these are just like the words that are quite commonly used within design. So we've got 2 on the screen here. So personas. So personas help you understand who you're designing for. So for example, at Auto Trader, we have to design for people who don't know that much about cars, but knowing this helps us know, and when we do design the website, it helps us know how much information we have to provide to these people. And on the other hand of that, we also have people who are like really obsessed with cars as well. So we have to find that happy medium between providing enough information for people who don't know that much about cars, but also not bombarding those people who already know all of the nitty-gritty detail. So those are like personas that we would use to help us understand who we're designing the site for. One of the other terms that's quite commonly used within design is a user interface, and it's something that a human interacts with, and they really are everywhere. You will have all interacted with one previously. So user interfaces are all around us, from the apps that we use on our mobile phones to the household items that we have, like television remotes. So that is what a user interface is, and hopefully knowing those terms now will help you as we move into the next task, which I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to take you through this next stage.
Hello everyone. So for our next design task, we're going to be designing the front of a microwave. So your design must include a door, a button to open the door, a timer, and a power, and any other controls that you think are important. And for this task, we're going to give you 5 minutes. So off you go.
So if you have any questions, if you want to know any more, feel free to pop those questions down in the chat. But yeah, you've got 5 minutes now to just sketch out your best microwave design. And then we'll be asking you some questions afterwards about how you designed yours and why. So we've got about 2 minutes left now. One final minute now.
So I've managed to do a basic one here. Wonder how everyone else has got on. And there's the timer.
Just in time.
So let's think about the design. So where did you put the door on your design? Was it to the left, to the right, to the bottom? Have you got your controls on there? Where have you put them again? Are they on the right-hand side, the left, or at the top? And if you could just take a couple of minutes to quickly annotate your design and write down why you think you designed the microwave that way, and that's going to help us for later on.
Yeah, so the purpose of this bit is that we all, like most of us, will have a microwave in our house, but even when you look at them in a shop, they all look quite differently. Some of them have different buttons that others don't. So what we really want to get to the bottom of is, why did you design your microwave that way? So if you make some notes next to the sketch that you've done as to why you've made those decisions, and then we can get we'll be asking you some questions a bit later on about all of that, and there might be a competition at the end as well where you can win a prize. So Bella has written that she has put the door on the left and the buttons on the right. So I'll probably give you about a minute just to make those little notes down. So obviously you've made some decisions, but why do you think you did that? Is it because that's what the one that you've got in your home looks like? Is it because you think it's easier to use that way? And Sarah said that she did the controls on the right also. Yeah, so I've got a few people saying that they did that because it's similar to what their current microwave looks like, which makes sense. So about 30 more seconds. But some people have changed the order of the buttons. Oh, well, that should have been enough time for you to jot all of those down. So I'll hand back over to you, Kate.
So is there ease of movement between your doors and controls? So with your hinges on the left-hand side and your controls on the right, can you easily open the door and put your food in the microwave? Or if your hinges are on the right-hand side and you're opening the door, you might have to go around the door to put your food into the microwave. I know Emma's mentioned that she's changed the controls around. Is that for ease of movement between the different controls? So there we go. If we put it on the right-hand side, we're going around the door. And have you got a button to open the door? If we put it at the top and our door, we're putting the plate in at the bottom, that's the furthest distance away. But if we put the controls at the bottom to open the door, then that's a much shorter distance. So again, it's for ease of movement. And we've got the timer. So how have you done the timer? Is it buttons that you press? And can you enter numbers in? Or you might have a dial. Can you put your minutes and seconds in? And can it go up to, from 0 to 60 minutes on the timer? And now how do we enter that? Have we got an enter button? Is there a power button? Again, that could be a dial, or that could be entering the buttons. But how do we do this? And have we got the power and a timer button, which is separate? Or have we got the power and timer button, which is different? Have all the requirements been delivered? So have we got a door, a button to open the door, a timer, and a power button that gets us from hide to defrost?
Yeah, so just having a look in the chat, there's been some interesting comments. So people have said that they did it because it's how their microwave looks at home. Sarah did a plus and minus for the timer rather than the numbers. But Sarah also forgot the start button. So I think that's something, isn't it, where we get given a list of requirements, but then you can also forget something that makes sense once it's pointed out to you, that of course you would need a start button, otherwise the microwave would never turn on.
There we go. So we've got the start button.
And then it's a stop as well.
Yeah. Or you could have it all in one.
Yeah, or you could have a start, stop. So the point... Go on, Kate.
Sorry. So your design will never be perfect the first time round, but it's okay. It's okay to fail. And at Auto Trader, we definitely value fail fast and learn from your mistakes. There's been many times in my past experience where we've done designs and we've worked out that they don't quite work, but we learn from them and definitely adapt in design.
Yeah, so very rarely within our design teams do we get it right the first time round. But that's the purpose of these types of exercises. So we'll quite often sketch down an idea, or we'll build out a design in one of our tools, and then we take it to our team members and we ask them to critique it. So we ask for feedback, and then somebody else will say, oh, have you thought about this? And then it, just like the start button with the microwave, it's like, oh, of course we need that, but sometimes it can just slip your mind. So we always work in a team mindset of, we're really open to feedback and we're okay with failing as long as we learn from the mistakes that we've made. So now we want to make some time to test your microwaves. So we've got another short task for you now, and this one you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit. So you need to cook a frozen microwave lasagna, which is imaginary because we don't have lasagnas for you all, unfortunately. And your lasagna needs to be defrosted for 4 minutes and cooked on a medium heat for 5.5 minutes. And what we want you to do is to use your finger and just imagine that you're using the microwave to cook this frozen lasagna. So we're going to give you 5 minutes again, and what we want you to do is just to test it, to make sure, to see how your microwave goes and to see if you've got all of the options that are needed to be able to cook this microwave lasagna. So I'm going to start a timer now for 5 minutes. And again, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat section now. And I think Gabby's made a microwave as well, so we'll see how her testing goes on. So I'm going to start the timer now. So we're just about halfway through now. So Emma's just noted down that she didn't have a medium heat specifically, only high or low. So we've got about 2 minutes left. So if, like Emma, you've realised that you don't have something that you need, again, just make a note of that, because that's something that you can make a change to your microwave later on. So Bella has added the door open button, so now she thinks that her microwave works okay, so that's good. Okay, cool. So that's this timer done now. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations to you all, because you all just did a paper prototype test. So the results are in, and we would love to know how it went. So did your microwave have all of the options needed? So Emma's mentioned that hers didn't have the medium heat, only had high and low. And Bella mentioned that during the first test, she realised that she didn't have the open button, so she added that, and then it all worked okay. So if your microwave didn't have all of the options that were needed, what we want you to do is just write down any changes that you want to make to your design now, now that you've tested it. And also, we just want to remind you that it's okay to fail, because that's how we learn. So the paper prototype test that we just did, as a user researcher, so myself and Gabby, these are the types of tests that we do with designers all of the time. So they'll quite often come to us with their designs, and we go through and we test them. Sometimes we'll test them with real users who would use our website, and other times we'll just use them ourselves. And that's when we're able to identify the fact that they might have forgotten something, or they could think of something a little bit differently and it might work a bit better. So we always test our designs. So I'll give you a few more seconds just to jot down any changes that you want to make to your microwave now that you've tested it. So Sarah's mentioned that the timer only went up in minutes, so she didn't have the option to add the seconds. And Emma's mentioned some different power settings as well for the confirm and enter button. Okay. So now we've gone through and we've tested our microwaves, what we really want to do is to think about the people whose lives our design will touch. So think about the people who will be using your microwave. So what works for you or us as individuals, it might not work for your average user, and we always have to think about that when we're building things. So now what we want you to do is to think about your design for a very specific type of user. So your microwave is going to be sold to retirement homes. 80% of the users will use full power 70% of the time and defrost 30% of the time. Only 2% cook for more than 30 minutes, and the average cooking time is roughly about 4 minutes. 60% of people have bad eyesight, and also some people have mobility issues. So they might struggle with small buttons with their eyesight, but they might also struggle using dials because they might not be able to have the strength in their wrist to turn those as well. So do you think that your design still works for your new user? So if not, what we want you to do again is to make some changes to make sure that they can use this microwave. So we're only going to give you about 2 minutes for this one. But what we want you to do is just think about your microwave now for this specific type of audience, and just write down on the side what things you might need to change to make it easier for them to use. So we've got a few people saying that the buttons might need to be bigger. So I'll just give you 1 or 2 minutes just to make those notes down now. So Bella's raised a good point that the buttons need to be bigger, but also the space in between them needs to be bigger as well, to make sure that they don't accidentally press the next button. Okay, so I think that's enough time now. What we want to really summarise is that just to keep it simple. So quite often when we have a look at user interfaces, so the example that I shared earlier about the television remote, I guarantee if you were to look at your TV remote, half of the buttons you wouldn't even know what they are actually for, and you've probably never used them. And so we always have a tendency to overcomplicate our designs, but actually by keeping it simple, we're making it easy to use for everybody. So keeping it simple is quite often the hardest part of design, and it's something that as designers we struggle with because we want to make it look really exciting and interesting, but sometimes we have to take all of that out just to make it actually usable for people who need to use the design or product. So I mentioned earlier about the opportunity for a prize. So if you would like to win a prize, we would love it if you would send us your designs. So your tutors or your teachers will receive the details after today's session. So make sure to ask them for a chance to win one of our amazing prizes. So we do actually have 2 prizes up for grabs. So we have a £20 Amazon voucher. And then we also have the opportunity to join us for a day's work experience where you will be joining one of our designers within a design team for the day, and you'll get to shadow them and see what it is to work at Australia as a designer. So what we would love for you to do is to send your designs, but we also want to see all of the notes and the changes that you've made and the reasons why you've made those changes. So there are some very clear instructions that we've got in the pack that we can hand that somebody from Manchester Digital will hand out after today's session. But yes, we would love it if you could send us in your designs. And so that's all from us. If anybody has any questions, do feel free to post them in the chat now. Hopefully we can get through some of them.
Thank you so much for that. It's so interesting. I was playing along in the background and there were so many things that I forgot. I didn't have an open button at the start. And I was thinking, what does my microwave look like? And I still forgot that. It's a really interesting process to go through, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think microwaves are very similar to like the TV remotes, where they do have a tendency to have more buttons than you actually need. So the chances of you actually using all of them are very slim.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a few minutes. I'm just checking our times here. We've got a few minutes because we are going to break after this. What advice would you give someone that is interested in studying design thinking?
So there are many different routes. I think if you were to speak to me, Gabby and Kate separately, we've all taken very different routes to where we are right now. So I was a bit of a computer nerd all my life. So I went through the web development route. So even at school, I took ICT courses, and then at college, I studied an ICT BTEC course. And I went to university and studied web development, so specifically front-end development and user experience. So I would say the advice is just to to look at things online. There are loads of videos online. There's loads of different things that you can do about reading. But the biggest part about design thinking is like thinking of your audience, because without your audience, your design won't go anywhere. So you've got to think about the people you actually want to use your design, because that's where all of the best designers actually come from, are the ones who think about their audience and who's going to be using their design in the end. I don't know if Gabby and Kate want to do a quick intro into how they got into their roles.
I don't mind doing that. I think I did almost more sort of physical design, so physical products. So at university, I studied product design and technology. So it was designing sort of physical products, and then with technology embedded within them. And then I went on before this to do kitchen design. So I was working a lot of the time very closely with my customers and with the audience. And I think that is when I really started to understand and get the thinking behind I'm designing for somebody else, and you really get into how they interact and use things. So then I've used those skills that I've learned and transferred them over into sort of UX design and gone in sort of that path. So I think there's very various ways that you can get and start learning about design thinking.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Gabby? What's your route?
So mine's probably quite different, actually. I'm sure everyone's is different, but I've only been part of the design team since October. So I joined Auto Trader around 5 years ago as a graduate in customer experience. So I was working a lot with our customers around any feedback they had about Auto Trader, which sort of led to becoming interested in user research and then moving into the design team. So I guess my piece of feedback is that there is so many routes that can lead you towards like working with design and research, and that you should just choose what you really enjoy. And there's always opportunity to change or go in different directions, because I never imagined 5 years ago that I'd necessarily be part of a design team. And now it's
really nice to hear the different views, because that kind of echoes what everyone's sort of told us today. And it's good to see you talking about how you had careers that weren't kind of necessarily on a digital product, so doing what you do, but kind of offline as well, and how that can be translated online. And I think that it just goes to show everyone that's watching that there's so many different routes into the industry, and you don't have to be really technical to do those skills, and you don't have to be kind of in the digital and tech industry now to want to work in it in the future. There's so many opportunities, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got another question here. What's it like working for Auto Trader?
So I think I've worked for Auto Trader 2 years. I think Gabby's been about 5 or 6 years now, and Kate is only half a year in. So I would say it's very exciting. So I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that the stuff that we work on is seen by 55 million people a month. And I remember the first time I heard that statistic and I was like, whoa, no pressure. But I think that's really exciting. We're quite a fast-paced company. And we like to try new things and experiment with different ideas. And I think that's a really fun environment to be in, because your creativity is never like quashed. You're always encouraged with your curiosity and your creativity. So if you've got an idea, the business is always happy to hear it, and we know we're happy to test things. And I think that's a really positive environment to work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think for myself, I've certainly found it really nice working within a team. I'm getting, being fairly new to the business, there's a lot of ideas that bounce off each other, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of Auto Trader.
That's great. It's always good to hear. I've got another couple of questions. So what would you like to redesign and why?
So this is one of those funny ones where when you start to work in design or in user experience specifically, you can't switch it off. So, you do this for your day-to-day job, but then you'll be in Tesco's using the self-service checkout, and I get really frustrated at how poorly they're designed. And my boyfriend's always like, oh, it doesn't matter, just leave it. But I get very frustrated at how poorly they are designed sometimes. So I think it's those little random user interfaces that you encounter in your day-to-day life, and you just think, God, I wonder why they did it that way. Like, I wonder if they thought about it from this perspective or this, and you just want to ask those people questions. So I wouldn't say it's anything massive. I think it's those little things that you interact with in your day-to-day life that sometimes can just be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, I think we've all had those, haven't we? Every day. What about you, Kate? What would you redesign?
I think I definitely relate to that with Natalie, especially starting since October. A lot of online shopping, terrible for it. But when I'm browsing on there or when I get an email sent through, I'm always wondering why they've not put a button on there, or if I'm looking for an inquiry, why is that not quite there? Yeah. But yeah, I definitely find myself doing that a lot more now since October.
What about you, Gabby?
For me, it's got to be my Skybox. So I've had my Skybox since Christmas. So 6 months of trying to figure out how to record programs, how to watch things on catch up, how to add in all my apps and things. And I'm still struggling with it today just because of it's so highly technical that there's just so many buttons, voice commands, and all these extra cool things. But actually, sometimes it's just the really simple things that you need to be able to do that it can be really hard.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant note to end on as well. It's the simple things, isn't it, that you can kind of really influence and change.